This is a podcast from the Department for International Development.
Hello, my name is Stefan Dercon. I am the Chief Economist at the Department for International Development. I'm also professor at the University of Oxford. My role in DFID is to advise, to challenge and help the organization, especially around economics and development. This is a great moment for DFID because we are launching the economic development strategy. It tells us how we will work as DFID to use economic development as a means to drive poverty reduction. It sets out what we will do and how we will work across the UK government to support the emergence of better trade relationships, investment relationships, and other economic linkages that are good for the poor, that are good for poor countries, and that also are in the national interest of the UK. The economic development strategy is not something totally new that suddenly emerges out of nothing. We're talking here about an evolution rather than a revolution. In particular, what the economic development strategy does is brings together a series of efforts we've been making over the years, but brings it all together and the things we've learned of how we can be better at promoting economic development in our countries and through our programs. So what's the premise here? Well, economic development is important and essential to try to get poor people into good jobs and into secure livelihoods. In fact, that's what it's all about. DFID is driven by trying to achieve poverty reduction, and the only way we can achieve this really is that we have poor countries that are strong economies, and that as a means of fighting poverty, we create the economic opportunities for poor populations to benefit from progress. And indeed, it's the only way for countries to be sustainable and able to do without aid in due course. So what we want to do is use economic development as the big force that brings people out of poverty and allows countries then to exit from a dependency on aid. So obviously this is not new. DFID has been promoting economic development in various means for a long time. In fact, the whole development community has been working hard at trying to get people into opportunities, into good, better livelihoods and so on. But what this does is to try to actually bring this together into something that is more actionable and more coherent, both within DFID and also across the rest of government. Another way of thinking about this is that what we want to do in development here is to still support so that people have good livelihoods, secure livelihoods, that poor people find jobs and good activities for them to do. But we do this in a way that actually it is bolstering the economic opportunities now and in the future for these villages, these communities, these towns, these countries that they live in. So why do we do this now? Well, this is really an important time to do it, because in the developing world, population growth has been coming down to some extent, but not everywhere. But most importantly, a lot of young people are entering the labor market at this moment and in coming decades. We think that 1 in 4 people will be an African citizen in 2050, and a huge amount of them will be young people. We need to create tens of millions of jobs each year to absorb them into the labor market. That's a lot of people to give good livelihoods for. The only way for countries to be able to absorb these into their economies is to help to make their economies stronger and start preparing and working on job creation now in these places. But there's another reason to do this now. This is a really good moment. Just as Britain is resetting its international relationships, there is a really good moment to also resetting our relationships with poor countries and working with them around linking trade and economic opportunities and development for the benefit of these poorest countries. And it's important to realize that we do this now as well, because the alternative is quite worrying. If we don't do this now, we are getting more and more people living in countries where there are few opportunities. And we know how populations across the world are getting worried about migration and the influx of refugees. Creating strong economies is in that sense in the interest also of the UK, to try to actually make sure that we create local opportunities for people so that they can fulfill their own dreams where they are in their own context. There's another reason why this is good for the UK now. This is the moment for the UK to build the trading partners of the future in the interest of the UK national prosperity. So where does this fit in with all the attempts that were made in the context of the UN to get new global goals agreed that would define the whole framework of sustainable development for the future? Well, the Sustainable Development Goals do include important goals around economic opportunities for all. Economic opportunities, job creation, not least for poor people and for vulnerable populations. So this is something that is actually totally consistent with it. But there is more. When I travel around in African countries and other poor countries in Asia, what governments, but also civil society, and indeed what people ask for, is to have economic opportunities. Working with them on economic issues is exactly the kind of things they ask from us. We know that working on economic development is the best development strategy for any country. East Asia is a big example. China, Vietnam, they have at some point chosen to go on a route to try to grow their economies, to creating jobs and opportunities for their populations. We know of their success. But they were very, very poor countries only a few decades ago. What we're doing with the economic development strategy is to learn from the examples across the world where economic development has been a proven strategy to reduce poverty and to create jobs, and to bring this into countries that are now ready to take the mantle of some of these fast-growing economies from yesterday. For example, DFID is working in Ethiopia, together with government, together with private sector, to build up an industrial park where in the short run 30,000 and probably something like 60,000 workers will be involved, working in Western firms, in Asian firms, working on garments and textiles meant for the European and the US market. These are the kind of activities that were unheard of until recently in a country like Ethiopia, that we all identified with extreme poverty and indeed with famines and other disasters. But now that country is also trying to transform, with our support, into producing goods that they can sell overseas, but most importantly, creating jobs for poor people now, so that these people have much more secure livelihoods in their own countries.